Assalamu alaikum jameen wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As always, a very warm welcome to you all. We welcome you to our show today, where we're going to be discussing some of the prohibitions regarding the state of Ihram itself. But I must emphasize that this is split into 4 parts. And today we're going to be only focusing on part 1, where we'll be mentioning some of the prohibitions for men and some for the women. This is all to ensure that, inshallah, our dear viewers watching, when they make their preparations for the Hajj, they know what to expect, inshallah. We are not alone. As always, we have our respected Hajj expert, our dear alim, Syed Raza Rizvi, and I welcome the dear Syed to the show. Dear Syed, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Hope you're well today, inshallah, as well.
Alhamdulillah.
Dear Syed, I would like to mention some of the prohibitions which I've noted down. And as I mentioned, we've split them into 4. The reason being because there's so many and we want to cover all of them adequately. So for men, I've noted down that the following: that they can't wear sewn clothes, they can't cover their head with clothing, and they have to be they can't be moving under the shadow. And finally, they can't wear something that covers the foot completely, like socks. And for women, we have noted down here, in the state of Ihram, they cannot cover their face and they must wear gloves. So just in a small, you could say, brief outline, why are there so many restrictions in the state of Ihram?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The state of Ihram is the state of Hajj.
Yes.
And it outlines the significance of this ibadat. Once you're out of the state of Ihram, the restrictions are lifted.
Yes.
So all the restrictions and the things which are forbidden, which some are forbidden anyway, but some are not forbidden, but they are forbidden in the state of Ihram. Now, for men and women, both have their own certain things that apply to them specifically. For men, they are not allowed to move under the shade or travel. So but during the night, according to Syed al-Sistani, he allows men to travel during the night, for example, in a bus or something which is covered. But if the weather is bad, or if it is raining especially, he places a condition, then you must not, even during the night, travel under a shade.
Okay.
Now, so you can stand with an umbrella above your head if you're standing in a line, but when you start moving, then you cannot.
Okay, I see. And it's quite strict, I've noticed, like these prohibitions are very detailed, they're fine-lined. Is this from like a hadith? Or is it from
These are all from Quran and hadith.
Okay.
So there are detailed hadiths explaining all the rules. Okay. And it's not only just hadith that the Imams alayhi salam, the Holy Prophet performed 1 Hajj, but the Aimam alayhi salam performed, each one performed tens of Hajjs. So they pointed them out all the time. And people going to Hajj every year would be asking them. So we have traditions from reporters who have asked the Imam this question, and the Imam says, okay, don't do this. For example, the Holy Quran says, La rafatha wa la fusuqa wa la jidala fil Hajj. For example, in Hajj you cannot do this argument. So, I'll not go into that. But the Quran mentions it, and also a hadith in detail mention them.
Yes.
Now, the men cannot wear sewn clothes, like with stitching, with the sewing, and the clothes are not allowed for men. For women, they're allowed. So men cannot wear clothes which are, with shirts, trousers, or any of those, so they have to wear simple clothing, just like in a shroud. And for men, again, they cannot wear not only just socks, they cannot even wear shoes and boots that cover the top of their feet. Okay. So they need to have simple, not even sandals, but with very thin stripes.
Yeah.
Slippers.
Yeah.
So the slippers that they wear should have very thin stripes.
Yes.
Only those are allowed.
Okay.
So the bottom of the feet can be covered. In olden days, they had, like marks where you would hold them with your toes, and then you will basically, the top of the foot will be uncovered.
Yes.
And the sole of the foot will be covered.
Okay.
So the sole of the foot is allowed to be covered, but the top of the foot is even not allowed to be covered.
I see.
And for men, even to cover their head,
okay,
is not permissible. So they cannot wear a cap or a turban or a cloth. They cannot place on their head.
And that includes like travel by car or anything like that. So travel then has to be done in the night?
And so the travel has to be done in the night. So usually after Maghrib and Isha, we leave Masjid al-Shajara, Dhul Hulayfa, the Miqat, and we're traveling in the bus. Usually in olden days, they had open roof buses,
Yes.
but these days they're not allowed. So all buses are covered. So the Shias would only get the open roof buses. But now, so you have covered buses, but then we try and make sure that we travel during the night.
I see.
And even then, if some of the Maraji do not allow, then you have to pay a penalty, a kafara.
I see. And is that the same case for like an injury? Let's say a person, he's fit and able, but because of his slippers, he slipped, something happened to his ankle, he still can't wear any support, he has to still walk in the slippers?
Unless because of an accident or something, then it may be a different case.
Okay.
We're talking about just normal circumstances.
Yes.
And then it will not be allowed.
I see. And they say regarding the ihram for men specifically, some men find it a bit difficult in tying from the waist downwards, covering that part.
Yes.
Can they wear belts, and can the belt be, sewn as well?
Okay, so now some scholars do allow sewn belts, but generally we say that it is better to get the one with steel buttons, so which is not sewn. And the belt is only allowed if it is carrying some money, so it is a money belt. So you're carrying some money or carrying your passport or your card or something like that in it. And in that way, it is for a purpose. You're not wearing it to tie. It is not a belt to tie the ihram only. It is to carry some money or some card, and also it helps in tying your ihram.
I see. Okay, thank you there, Syed. And is it permissible when we've gone through a lot in recent times and in other times to come, such as the instances of a pandemic or something like that? Can women then, although it's not allowed, can they then cover their faces with a mask or something?
Yeah, masks are allowed for men in Hajj, but are not allowed for women.
Okay.
Unless it was a condition because of the pandemic.
Okay.
I have not seen for health reasons that the Maraji may have allowed, but I have seen in the past that they did not allow for women to cover the face, because the covering of the face for women is not allowed in Hajj.
Thank you, dear Syed, for that beautiful explanation. Dear Syed, I wanted to ask you next regarding shadows again. Like, are we allowed to travel then in tunnels? What if a person, is feeling quite hot, can't cover his head, but then can he put his hand over his head? Are these intricacies allowed?
There are no problems traveling in the tunnel.
Okay.
So there are, because Mecca is mountainous, hilly area, and there are many, many tunnels for people to travel. Otherwise, you would have had to go over the hills.
Yes.
So what they do is they have basically built long tunnels, and there is no issue in traveling in the tunnel because that's it's a natural cover for you. You're not actually taking a cover for yourself. It is something that cannot be avoided. So there is no penalty for that. It is permissible. And if you're traveling, it is too hot. Some people have less hair. Some people are more sensitive. So they can place their hands on their head, and that would be permissible.
I see. Okay. And, God forbid someone has a stroke or something, because it's very, very hot. Some people, like in Europe, we're not used to that kind of heat, 30, 40, 50 degrees plus. If, God forbid, again, they pass out or something like that happens and they require, medical needs, is that allowed then in that circumstance?
Yes. All of those are, all exemptions. Yuridullahu bikum al-yusra wala yuridu bikum al-usr. The Almighty Allah wants ease for you, does not want difficulty for you. So any health conditions have exemptions.
I see. And one interesting question that we get quite a lot from our youth as well, I've heard, is that there's some new types of socks now, or even shoes that are transparent. So they're quite, like lacy. So if you put it on, it covers the foot, but it's very transparent at the same time. Again, are they allowed, or would it still count as covering the foot?
It still counts as covering the foot, and these will not be allowed for men.
Regarding women's gloves, so that's a prohibition under the state of Ihram. Why for women, but not for men?
So there are conditions, for example, covering the face for the women, and the gloves for women are forbidden. Sometimes in many cultures, it was common practice for women to cover their face. But in Ihram, in the state of Ihram, it is not permissible. And likewise, it is not permissible for women to wear gloves. Now, so the women usually, wore gloves because when they had beautification like coloring or nail polish or henna,
Yes.
and those are not allowed. So you're not allowed to do anything which is called beautification for men and women while in the state of Ihram. Okay. So perfumes and other beautifications. If rings are, for example, because of istihbab, because they are mustahab, then they're permissible. But if they are because of for beauty, for showing off, then they're not permissible. So likewise, in the state of Ihram, a person has to be as modest as possible, because Hajj is all about transformation of a person in their spirituality, in their attitude,
yes,
in ridding themselves of arrogance, like pride over race or language or anything like that.
yes.
And it gives you that strength in all of those, when you rid yourself of beautification, and avoid all of those for both men and women.
I see. And just coming back to the point of the shadow, they say, I remember that's a lot of people say now, especially for example, instead of Ihram, in Arafah and other areas, there are modern tents, so with air conditioning. Again, I know it's allowed, but why is the philosophy there different? Where before you can't cover your head, but then when you're staying in the tent, your head's covered, but that's fine.
Because when you're traveling, in olden days they had camels and horses they would use.
Yes.
So for women it was allowed, yes, to have a sedan or a cover on top of their head, yes, above their head. For men it was not allowed. Okay. But when you're not traveling, then it is permissible. So this is during the day. Now in the tents, because it is heat and it is a very hot climate, so from the beginning it was allowed that you could have tents, and you don't even have to do so much ibadat, but even to rest and perform your obligations like prayers and other things.
Yes.
Amal, du'as under in a tent.
Okay.
So you can have either fans or cooling or air conditioning.
Yes.
So the coolers and everything are allowed, yes, in the tents.
Thank you, Syed. And it really highlights that there are so many, certain conditions, but there are exemptions which apply as well, given the state. And I really like the point you mentioned earlier that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't make things hard for you. He wants ease, and that Hajj is, a form of trial, but within certain limitations. They say that, just a final question on this point then is, we mentioned previously that there are differences between men and women in terms of the prohibitions. Again, do you think that the culture back in Arabia from Prophet Muhammad's time, that's affected some of the rituals we have today, or is it still fulfilling the time of Prophet Ibrahim? Because some of the Hajj rituals come from there as well. What's the fine line between the two?
So there are most of the prohibitions are common between men and women, but there are some which are specified to men, some are specified to women. Now, although we do believe that there were many rules legislated from the time of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, but the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he came, he either finalized an obligation or abrogated it, yes, and made sure that whatever rules in his time are legislated, they are final. Okay. And so the verse came, Al-yawma akmaltu lakum deenakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. Today we have perfected your religion for you. And the Holy Prophet ﷺ made sure that haramu Muhammadin haramun ila yawm al-qiyamah wa halaluhu halalun ila yawm al-qiyamah. That Muhammad ﷺ's haram is haram till the day of judgment, and his halal is halal till the day of judgment.
Yes. Okay. Thank you once more, dear Syed, for that beautiful interaction, as well as the clarifications you provided. I'm sure our dear viewers also found that very useful. Our dear viewers, once more, thank you for tuning in as well. We hope you found that clear and to the point. Like I mentioned now, it's where the discussions get a bit more in detail. So please do tune in. There's a lot of fine lines regarding the Ihram, as we'll cover next week as well. We're going to be covering some more prohibitions regarding the Ihram in our next episode. So please do tune in. And inshallah, from us here at Safia TV, we would like to take your leave. Please remember it's in your du'as. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.